Why is French pronunciation so hard? Hi, my name's Chris. I work at We Communicate. We do French classes for adult learners, and in this video we're going to talk about why French pronunciation is so hard. And this is my second full-length video. They call it long content video something. I said in my first, I don't care about looking all YouTube-y and upbeat, and the reason is I don't care, and I care a lot about teaching French, but I don't care about being all, I'm not going to do that. So we're going to have a real conversation between adults who are learning French and who want a few answers, and hopefully I'm going to provide some of those answers. Thank you very much for watching, and before we start, I'm a real teacher in real reality, and you can really find me and I can really teach you. So let's start. 6 reasons that I can think of why French pronunciation is so hard. Now, reason 1, if you're wondering why the pronunciation is hard, it's highly likely that you learned under a French teacher who didn't know the phonetic system of English. They were unsuccessful in teaching you according to your first language. What I'm saying is, you might have learned under a French teacher who, even if they spoke English, they didn't know the technical side of English. They really didn't know your language or how it worked. Reason number 2, myths are shared through social media to entertain students. Many French teachers make amusing videos to show how illogical French can be. This myth is perpetuated and made to be believed. Social media, funny videos, how hard French is, and reason number 3, a lack of perspective on English will have us overlook that English is incomparably more unpredictable than French, and this is true, to the point where letters hardly mean anything at all. I'm thinking of, take as an example the words America and the word Japan, and you'll quickly figure out that the letter A means absolutely nothing in English. English is incomparably more unpredictable than French. Reason number 4, over-exaggeration induces a sense of panic. We think, what is this crazy language where all the E's are silent and letters combine, and what's the term, mush into each other or something? French pronunciation should be looked at factually and not emotionally. Reason number 5, not knowing what we mean by pronunciation and using it as an umbrella term. It confuses the matter even more. Is it the letters, the words, the intonation, the sentences, the syllables? What do we mean by French pronunciation? And my guess is a good chunk of YouTube teachers have no idea themselves. The reason is they're not qualified linguists. Linguists, you become a linguist how? By studying it in college/university, and you develop a certain frame of mind. Otherwise we're stuck talking about the vague term, the umbrella term, pronunciation, which is not a linguistic term. And finally, reason number 6, a lack of proper classes on pronunciation. Once you know what's expected of you, it will all seem clearer. You'll distinguish the facts from the myths and improve tenfold. It can be a lot simpler than what they say. So these are the first 6 reasons why you may believe French pronunciation is hard, and if you will forgive me, it's still tea time. So why does We Communicate, that's me, why do We Communicate say it's easy? Without being able to comment on what other teachers or schools do, the fact is that our French pronunciation class barely holds in 4 pages, and I'm talking about very large font. 4 pages of PDF, and it's not even 4 full pages because I have it visually in my mind's eye. As long as you learn to tone down the codes of intonation that come from English, you'll be fine. So I'll repeat that. I can't comment on what other teachers or schools do because I don't know, but our French pronunciation class barely holds in 4 pages. It's not 4 pages of tiny text. There's not even a paragraph. It's just very big font, easy examples, very large font. So as long as you learn to tone down the codes of intonation that come from English, you'll be fine. Well, this implies that your teacher know what the codes of intonation are in English, of course. Pronunciation is one of our shortest classes and can easily be covered in under 60 minutes by taking it slowly. We might have the advantage of knowing the phonetic system of English as linguists, but all the same, there isn't that much to know, even if we didn't. When we say that French pronunciation is easy, we mean that producing these sounds is not a physical challenge to a student coming from English, except from the difference between ou and u. This is always a bit challenging. The sound e, now the closest thing we have in English is give, live, the name Tim, Timothy, Tim. The sound e, it's a very close sound to the sound e in French, like the word for summer, the season, you know, summer is l'été. So l'été is slightly sharper than l'été. So if I were to say l'été with an English accent, I will say l'été, l'été. So it's a lot, I don't know, flatter, let's say. Let's call it flatter. French is always sharper than English. That's a good rule to go by. So there's ou and u. It's always a bit challenging, especially the u. Some English speakers, when they take, in my classes I noticed that some of them can't physically do the sound. Oo and U is all the same for them. But it takes a bit of practice and we get there eventually. We always do get there eventually. Second sound is E, like give, live, l'été, j'ai, I have, like an English person or American, it's all the same. Coming from English, I would say j'ai. It's a lot flatter. And the third sound is en, E-N-A-N, en. They find it a bit hard. But other than that, it's not a physical challenge to pronounce French coming from English. The term hard might rather refer to a hard mental process to overcome, because words sound differently than in English. Whatever the reason may be, our 4-page class on French pronunciation will teach you the majority of what you need to be properly understood by all native speakers of French. And that's a fact. There's not even 4 pages now that I see it. It's 2 full pages, almost 3 and a bit, 3 and a third. It's not even 4 full pages. So I can't comment on what other schools do, but the fact is, there you go. Next we'll speak about the objective easiness of French, because French is objectively easy, and I'm talking about linguistically, factually. French is factually easier than English for linguistic reasons. Then again, it implies that you know the phonetic linguistic system of English. In this video, don't just take my view. I'm not trying to impose an argument of authority, and I'm not trying to convince you. You can check it for yourself. There are objective reasons why French is more easy, quote unquote, because it's not really a linguistic term, easy. It's not very scientific. French is easier than English, the first reason being that it's a lot more predictability. Firstly, letters actually represent sounds. Letters mean sounds, isn't it beautiful? Ask yourself about the function of A in Japan, the A in fame, and you'll get a clear picture. It's not even consistent between America, UK, New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, Scotland. We'll have to take a second to take this in. Not only is the English pronunciation not consistent within itself between letters and sounds, but even between countries or areas, even within the same country, within England, the pronunciation of English is not consistent if you look at the letters that you compare to sounds. Isn't it beautiful? And we're still saying that English is an easy language. Second, French syllables don't present surprises either. It's always the last syllable that takes the weight of the word. It's so predictable. In English, it's mostly a surprise, and we can never be quite sure how to pronounce a word we don't know beforehand. And I'm sure it's happened to you if you're a native speaker of English. You saw a word, you didn't know how to pronounce it, and there's no shame, but you just didn't know because the letters do not tell you. This is not in the article, but I'll add this thought. I do this sometimes with my students. I show them a word in French. Even if they don't know what it means, it looks like a complex word, a brainy word, if you will. They can read it. Once I tell them, trust the letters. There's no surprises in French, none at all. In English, it's mostly guessing. On a sentence level, English really takes the cake. The very subtle modulations of our sentences convey a lot more meaning that non-natives don't usually pick up on. It's not what you say in English, it's how you say it. French doesn't have all these complex codes of pronunciation. In English, they are actually so complex that they can't be taught. Plus, they don't even work between America and the UK, and I'll come back to this point. And lastly, every French sound is pronounced at the same volume. In English, we have many diminished vowels. We have long vowels, short vowels, diminished vowels, diphthongs. And by the way, did we mention that all French vowels are the same length? So what do these two last points mean? Well, let's summarize all of this because it's quite condensed. What I'm saying in this article is that you can prove to yourself with objective reasoning, factual proof, that French is factually easier than English. You might not know it because you might speak English as a native. I'm a teacher of English. I teach as a first and as a second language. In English, this is a fact, right? In English, there's only so much you can do if you teach English as a second language. There's only so far you can go. If you take as an example, no, let's not go straight to the example. The thing with English is how you wish to present the message. So there's a lot, when you speak English, there's a lot of your attitude that goes into the message. It's how you stand in regards to the message. We could almost say that. What's your position in regards to the message that you're conveying? It's very, very subtle. I'm not just talking about irony, but all these things can't be taught. In French, you could say that the sum of the words equals the meaning. It doesn't so much matter how you say French. In English, it really does. And these things can't be taught. When I listened to an interview with the famous football player Ronaldo, I sort of factually understand what he's saying, but I don't understand him as a person. So when an English person speaks, you can understand how they position themselves in regards to the message they're saying. the way they say it says a lot about the message. French doesn't have these codes. It's very, very complex, and I think it's almost dramatic because so many millions of people all around the world have the certainty that they do speak English, and they do on a factual level. You can say, okay, look at me, my mouth is making English sounds, I'm speaking English, I'm conveying a message in English, but I read this fascinating book on this topic, that English is so rich and subtle in intonations and shades of meaning, and it's all about how you say things, that foreigners and native speakers don't even realize what's going on, and you're completely speaking at cross purposes. And if it even happens between my wife and I, my wife's American, she uses completely different codes of intonation, and in the beginning of our relationship she always thought I was taking the piss, because she thought I was mocking her. She thought I had no enthusiasm. You know, if she said, let's go for a walk, I said, oh yeah, that would be nice, yeah. And she looked at me, is that all? You don't want to go for a walk? I said, yeah, I do, that'd be nice, yeah, a nice walk, yeah, come on, let's go. And so she was expecting me to express this in a different way, with more intonation, and that the codes are completely different. She's gotten used to it now. But we did have our fair share of misunderstandings. But most of the world doesn't realise it's going on. They just figure, I learnt English, I'm all right. It's very complex, you know, English. Very, very complex. And this is why I defend the point of view that French should be the international language, because there's no hope to ever reach that level of English if you learnt it as a second language. I'm telling you, you think you do, but you can't. It's very, very complex. And hardly ever anyone speaks about it. It's fascinating. So we said, of course, that English letters don't mean anything, and we also said that between countries there's no consistency. We talked about syllables. Now, what's a syllable? The word computer has 3 syllables. Computer. We don't say computer, and we don't say computer. In French, it's always the last syllable that's louder. So there's no guessing. If I were to choose, okay, let's take the word guitar. Well, first of all, in English, there's guitar, so it's the second syllable that's longer. Well, it's longer, but it's also louder. Guitar. In French, it's guitare. La guitare. Ta-ta, ta-ta, ta-ta. It's always the same. It's the last syllable's louder. Guitare. La guitare. La guitare. La guitare. It never changes. I could give you any word. It's always the same thing. It's very consistent. So we talked about individual sounds. We talked about the going up one size, the syllables, sounds, syllables, and now we're going to talk about sentences. This is where it gets really complicated in English. On a sentence level, English really takes the cake. I said there are some very, very subtle modulations of our sentences, and they convey meaning that non-natives don't usually pick up at. And the most obvious case is irony. Imagine you have a friend who always wears the same blue t-shirt. You might say something like, "Are you wearing a blue t-shirt today, are you?" Now you've understood very well that I'm having a joke. If you come late to the dinner table, you might say something like, "Good morning." Now you understand very well that I'm not happy, just in my way, the way I said good morning. You know I'm not saying good morning, I'm saying you're late and I'm not happy about this. This is a case of irony, but it happens all the time. It would be a very, very long class to explain exactly how it works, but it is very, very complex. French doesn't do that. At least not so much. I mean, we're talking about a small percentage in French. If you want to be blatantly, if you want to be blatantly ironic in French, you can do that, but other than that, it's very marginal. And in English, these codes of intonation are so complex, they can't even be taught. And they can't even transfer between America and the UK or New Zealand or Australia. And we didn't even mention volume yet. This was the last point. Every French sound is pronounced at the same volume. If I say, I don't know, the book is on the shelf, I would say le livre est sur l'étagère. I didn't say le livre sur l'étagère. I say, if you say the book is on the book is on the shelf, the book is on the shelf. I'm not saying the book is on the shelf. Le livre est sur l'étagère. The book is on the shelf. I'm not saying the at the same volume as book, and I'm not saying it at the same volume as is. Now, if you wanted to switch that around and emphasize a different part of the sentence, you would say, the book is on the shelf. That might work in England, but not in America. Like, the book's not on the shelf. The book is on the shelf. Look, I'm emphasizing a different sound. And this is very, very complex. I do it as a native. I can't explain how I do it. Or maybe I could, but it would be so complex to explain. The book is on the shelf. The book's on the shelf. And there's more meanings than one here that come into my sentence. It's just the way I say it. The book's on the shelf. Open your eyes, sort of thing. French can't do that. I can't say le livre est sur l'étagère. I can't start to emphasize the verb of the sentence. It doesn't mean anything. Okay, so French always the sum total of your words is like 1 + 2 + 1 = 3 and so forth. The sum total of your words equals the meaning in French. Next we'll speak about the myth of the accent. Another issue that contributes to the supposed hard French pronunciation is the matter of the accent. Let's be clear. Everyone has an accent. There's no ideal norm that you need to reach. Not in France, not in Belgium, not in Switzerland, not in America. The English of Boston is as good as the English of Massachusetts, is as good as the English of Oxford in English, or the English of Adelaide in, where is it, New Zealand? I hope it's in New Zealand, I think it is. It's all good. Everyone has an accent. Between families, between age groups, no two people speak the same way. So to think that there's this mythical norm that a lot of FLE French teachers still believe in, they still entertain the conversation, where is the best French spoken in France? Where is the purest French spoken in France? It does not exist. The reason they think that is not to fool you, but because they're not linguists and they have a degree of ignorance. I'm not saying stupidity, but they are not knowledgeable in the field of linguistics, so they let a lot of emotion come in where science should prevail naturally. French, the fact is, French is a very uniform language that shares the same system of sounds all over Francophonia. You can speak French in the Congo, in Belgium, Switzerland, France. It doesn't matter. The exception, of course, the glaring exception is Quebec. Okay, I'll give you that, I'll give them that. Quebec does have a different system of pronunciation, but otherwise, all over Francophonia, it's very uniform, it's wonderful. As long as your sounds are close enough to the original, you will be understood. It's all about getting close enough to the sound. Now, this is a different class altogether, but this is what you're aiming at. We can compare the sounds of a language to a colour. Let's imagine that O, the letter O, is red. If your red is too bright, it's orange. It's wonderful, I just happen to have the two of them. If your red is too bright, it becomes orange. If it's too dark, it becomes purple. Can anyone spot any purple here? I can't, but sadly. Oh, there's a purple thing, never mind. There's a flashlight that's purple. If it's too dark, it's purple. So as long as you shoot for some kind of red, we can agree that it's red. There are different types of red. This is not the same red as that red, but they're still both red, are they not? Is there red on the poster? You probably can't see the little American flag. There's red here. I'm holding a red pen. This is a red lamp. And this is a red pair of scissors. We have different types of red here. So as long as you shoot for some kind of red, we can agree it's red. Accents work in the same way. If you open your mouth too much or too little, it's like adding too much brightness to your red. You'll need to target a decent rendition of a French sound. There'll be no need to try and sound French, whatever that means. I'm really emphasizing whatever that means. You're shooting at some kind of red to be understood, because we're talking about communication here. We're not playing around with subjective terms and trying to sound French, whatever that means, because it doesn't mean anything. The only real difficulty to overcome is when your French is an obstacle to being understood. But you'll never have to hit the bullseye. You'll never have to target that perfection to hit the bullseye. As long as you hit the target, you're good to go. As long as your O sounds like a French O and it's not a... I don't know if I have a particular example here in this article, but I'll give you one in a second. Otherwise, let's just finish this. So coming from English, you'll have to tone down your enthusiasm because French doesn't express feelings with intonation as English does. Apart from that, as I said, no problemo. What that means is, like it's actually funny. If you're in, an English person would say, "Oh, I'm so happy for you. Oh, wonderful. Oh, it's such a lovely dog." Oh, if you say that in French, people will look at you. Say, "What is this? What is she? Is she a bit simple? Is she a bit?" You look at someone's dog and oh, what a wonderful puppy, look, he's looking at me. Oh, you can't say that in French. You go, "Oh, regardez le joli chien. Oh, merci." It's odd. In a sense, you say "I'm so depressed" the same way as you say "I'm so happy" in French. "Oh, je suis tellement content de te voir. Oh, je suis tellement déprimé aujourd'hui." It's the same thing. In English it isn't. Oh God, I'm so depressed today. So depressed today. "I'm so happy you invited me. Oh God, it's so good to see you. It's so good." There's something upbeat about English. It doesn't work in French. So don't aim for perfection. And what I mean is, let's take the letter the sound ah. If you open your mouth too much or too little, you're on your way to a different colour. You're on your way to a different sound. I'm on my way to saying I can't do if my mouth is too closed. I can't do it. I'm doing a different sound. It's the same. If I put too much darkness in my red, it becomes purple. It's the same thing. You need to target a decent rendition of a French sound and you'll be good. Next, let's go through a little checklist to locate the problem. Number 1. What is hard? Is it physically pronouncing certain sounds that you find hard? Number 2. Do you properly understand what you find hard? Or are you using it as a generic term? Number 3. Is the speed of native speakers an influence on your perception of French? Number 4. Did you work with a teacher who was also a specialist of English? Or did your teacher just know French? Number 5. Do you fully understand how letters relate to sounds in French? Number 6. Did you have access to concise information to explain to you the rules of the game in French? I mentioned that my concise information held in 4 pages. Did you have access to that? Number 7. Are you shooting for a mythical French accent? And are you being overly hard on yourself? Number 8. Have you studied the contents of the 4 pages on the article? Number 9. Are you confusing intonation and sounds? And number 10, did anyone properly explain to you the liaisons, the sounds between the words? Do you know that only some of them are compulsory, or do you still think it's a huge problem in French, you have to link all the words together, which is not actually true? To conclude this article, because this video is already over the 30-minute mark, to conclude, back when I still used to do hour-long French classes, which I don't do anymore, pronunciation was one of the first things I covered, because I knew it could serve as a nice icebreaker and that it was incredibly easy. So it is strange to me that some people say that French pronunciation is so hard, because it was my icebreaker. If you know a bit about teaching, you'll know that every class has an icebreaker, something fun, something easy. Well, I would start with the French pronunciation, because I know it was the most basic thing. It's easy, it's objectively easy, it's not a scientific term, but it's my icebreaker. It's possible that I see pronunciation, as a non-problem because I'm a linguist and think of communication first, not perfection. Now this is very important. I see it as a non-issue because I think as a linguist, we're not shooting for perfection, we're shooting for communication. Can you communicate in French and can people understand you? As long as you can be understood with ease, this is all that matters. We don't expect you to know the code of intonation to express irony in the same way we do in French. It's not about that. We don't expect you to know that the 8, the letter, the number 8, drops the T in front of a consonant. At least not straight away. So 8 euros in English, you would say 8 euros with the T, but you would say 8 personnes, 8 people, the T has dropped in front of a consonant. That's the next step up, but it's not an obstacle to being understood. If you say 8 personnes, people will still understand you. As a student, it can be useful to know that you're battling against your own brain, and I will be making videos on this. You must unteach yourself and accept new grammar or pronunciation. Our brain doesn't necessarily like this, but we must insist. This is why it's so crucial to use a service such as ours, that knows how your brain has been impregnated with English, so to speak. So this is what we do. We know how your brain has been impregnated with English. FLE teachers have no clue. They're good people, good human beings, good professionals, but they do not know how your brain functions in English. That's a fact. Ask your FLE teacher, do you know English as well as me? They'll probably say, no, I do not. Well, that's your problem right there. I promised myself I wouldn't be getting emotional, and I'm not. I remain stoic and just present the facts to grown-ups. We know English on a technical level. This is a bit like the royal we, because we is really me. We know it on a technical level, but also as native speakers ourselves. We can tell you before you've made an error where the error will come from. So in other words, before you even start classes with me, I already know what's going to pose a problem, which mistakes you're going to make, and how you process language. When my students speak French with me, I know exactly when they make a little error, I know exactly how they're thinking about French. And it's not rational, you know, it's subconscious. That's the thing. Because people don't say, oh, how do I say this in English? I'll say that in French. You don't have the time. It's as quick as split second. It's a subconscious influence of your English on your French. And I can spot that. And I can explain why you made that mistake, and I can explain what's going on. Whatever you decide to do next after reading this article or watching this video, thanks for stopping by, honestly, because, you know, I've shared an idea, and that may help you on your journey towards French, so with myself or someone else. But the larger picture is, thanks for stopping by. You've learned something, I hope. Please remember that French is objectively easier compared to English. We've proven it today in this video, I hope. It's all within your grasp, it really is. Adults can learn French. You really can. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Chris from We Communicate. I'm a real French teacher in real reality. You can really find me. I have a real business, and it would be my pleasure to make you a successful speaker of French. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy your Sunday, enjoy your week. Bye.